Hello, hello, Hill Squad. How is everyone feeling out there? We hope your summer is still serving some sunshine. And if not, then this fellow wellness queen will. Guys, we have a true powerhouse here today. I'm so excited for Gabby Reece. You know her. She's a volleyball icon, trailblazing health and fitness leader, New York Times bestselling author, podcast host, a wife and a mama of three. In case you didn't know, she is married to big wave surfing legend Laird Hamilton. Together, they've built an empire around movement, wellness, and longevity. Today, we're going to dive into all of it. From how she's navigating age 55 with power and presence to her ultimate recovery ritual, and it's not what you'd expect. We'll also get her health non-negotiables, but first, let's start with our quote of the day from Gabby herself. The most imperative thing is to build a practice that we can do consistently month after month and year after year. A practice that reflects who we are at whichever time we are in life. That means a willingness to try new things or change it up because we are ever changing. I love that. And with that, let's welcome Gabby. I do want to share a funny story about my first experience with you that you probably don't know.
Oh,
Actually,
really?
there's no way because I don't know if I've ever told you, but when I was working at Channel One News, so I was 21, I just moved to LA, I got put on an assignment. And I forget where we were, what part of the world we were, but I had to travel somewhere for a story. And the
Mhm.
producers, we all went out to eat at this really nice steakhouse. And I was like, whoa, we have expense accounts. This is so cool. They're like, order whatever you want. So I order a lobster.
Mm.
And I didn't know what pounds meant or whatever. So I ordered the lobster. And off to the side is you. You're at
Mhm.
another table there. And I was like, oh my God, she's so beautiful. That's Gabby. Oh my God. And, I was just like fresh out of Medford, Massachusetts. And I'm seeing like one of my first celebrities. I was so excited. And a freaking monster, like 4 pound lobster comes, and you and everyone's heads turn and look as it's placed in front of me. I was mortified. It was the biggest lobster I'd ever seen. Everyone was looking at me. I was like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing.
Oh, that's funny. Isn't it funny how we're taught to be embarrassed by eating a lot of food?
I know. It was delicious too. I love lobster.
Exactly. I would have
Um,
had a real sense of pride. I probably was admiring you. You just didn't realize it.
So tell me, like, I guess, you have been in this wellness space for such a long time, you know, and you're an athlete and you're a mom. You kind of like cover so many different, you know, um, areas in life. Like, what are your kind of number one wellness go-tos that you do? Like, I know you said in the quote we started with, it was like find a routine that you can be consistent with. I don't
Hmm.
know if I've ever found a true routine I could be super consistent with. I do shift and change. Sunrise and sunset never changes.
Mm.
But I wonder, what yours are.
The thing is if we say, quantity versus consistency, it's consistency is more important. Quality is more important than quantity. So I think for me, it's like principles that I live by that guide me. And actually, I've been at this long enough that I think it's sort of like I don't get confused by performance, because for the beginning part of my career was about performance. And then you're sort of training. Yeah, you want to improve and you want to be strong and you want to test yourself and challenge yourself. But really, it's like you're just trying to be strong forever, right? And so you move through performance and you start looking at living. And I've said this a lot that I think everyone is an athlete in some way or another, but that I think a lot of times they major in the minors. And so what I always now say is head that way. And what I mean by that is if we sort of say, hey, we'd like to go to the beach and the water is to our right. If it's a specific beach chair, I'm not going to be analyzing that when I'm 2 miles out. The first instruction would be like, well, let's head that way. So when I go to put something in my mouth, is it serving my goals? what, even if the goal at that moment is I'm in this incredible restaurant and the grandma's making handmade pasta, okay, that is something that is part of Head That Way. As long as it's, kind of less than 20% of the time. To choose to not work out or to move my body, okay, well, head that way. Just do the thing, move that way. Really tuning into how you feel. That's something that's really important to me because I can't tell you how you feel. Only you can. And so I think we sort of delegated that to the world, to our wearables, to our doctors, to everybody. And I think this idea of really going like, well, how does that exercise or that food or that person make me feel? So there's buckets, right? So if we're going to be talking about really specific, obviously sunlight is the premier bucket. I would have said nutrition 2 years ago. It's, sunlight, be in nature. It is nutrition and sort of recovery too, though, like sleep and stress management, and then food, and then obviously maybe even more important in a different way is love and connection. And so in all of those buckets, practicing first principles of kind of head that way, and we know what they are. We're all informed enough, and it's more about building the practice, and that's the second part for me, which is yeah, head that way, but also what is your practice? You've got to build your own practice that can change over time, but as long as those elements are in the practice, I think you got a good shot.
I love that you said love and connection because I don't know if that would have been something I would have said. Um, Maybe I'm just so focused on healing and not
Yeah,
thinking about that, but I think that's a really interesting area to expand on, especially knowing you've been married for what, like 3 decades at this point.
I know, right?
I know Kevin and I have been together
I think,
forever too.
yeah, I've been with Laird. I guess I'll be married to Laird this year, 28 years, and we've been together 30. So a decent amount, more than half my life. Let's just say that. I was a young woman when I met him. Let's say that.
And do you feel like you guys just always grew together? Was it ever like difficult? Because I feel like Kevin and I have always had those moments where like, are we gonna, oh, okay, we got there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's unfair for people to sell like, oh, it's just so easy. Listen, Laird and I've been literally for real almost divorced. Definitely one time, like papers were filed. I was 30. We had been together for 5 years, and I didn't grow up in a particularly house where that was happening, so I didn't have a good example. I was very much a person who took care of myself. So the idea of really being vulnerable to somebody, you'd think after, even though I was in the relationship for 5 years, I actually hadn't been brave enough to be vulnerable. And so I did the go-to move, which was to run away. And then certainly Laird wrestled drinking alcohol to the ground kind of 12 years into our relationship. And so we sort of had a little roller coaster at that point. But I think a couple of things. I think our values are very similar. So I grew up in the Caribbean, Laird grew up in Hawaii, and maybe we weren't taught like this is how you're supposed to be. We weren't, right? And so I
As a
think what
couple.
or even like in life, like you're
Mhm.
supposed like I have a lot of friends where the kids like grow up and it's like, well, what college are you going to go to, and then what job are you going to have? We never had any of that. I mean, look at our occupation. So I think the curiosity, the kind of thinking, oh, maybe I'll just walk my own path, I'll try to listen to what my voice is saying, we have that in common. Obviously we value caring for ourselves, and not to the point where you're psycho, because that's unhealthy for a whole other set of reasons. Where people get so, well, I did my 18 minutes and I had that many grams, and you're just like, uh-huh, sure, like that's really working. And the ability to be independent, and then really be united, I think has been easy. And just we're sort of similar and different enough that we can complement each other in ways that really are so helpful when you need a teammate, if you will, going through life.
Yeah, you do need a teammate.
If you
It's
can, like, that's the other thing we were talking about this morning. Sometimes I see women that, or men, but let's say women, it seems like women, if they've chosen to be single and now they're my age, then they want to sell you all the ideas about what's great about being single. And my thing is like, I'm not out here sort of selling everybody like, well, you should be married and this is why it's great and this and this. I think people should do whatever really is the thing that is going to make them feel fulfilled and have them participate and contribute to the world that they are in whichever way makes sense for them. So I do, when I say teammate, you could easily have a teammate that's a best friend.
Hmm.
Just my teammate is somebody I happen to live with. So that's the other thing I'm kind of sensitive to is like, hey, you don't have to do it this way. I sort of weirdly did it in a traditional way. It's a surprise to me, but I've seen it done a lot of ways that I think people feel good. So I just want to kind of highlight that because I think that's really important.
What's like your biggest passion right now?
In my work,
Yeah.
I have a couple things going on right now because I have been in this and we talk about our house in our house like less data, more experience is we are in a time where we have a wave of data and everybody knows like I love that people can talk to me about metabolic function, but they're like drinking booze and going to bed at 2 a.m. I'm like, okay, I think we've gotten off the rails a little bit. So I have a book project I'm working on, which will basically be about taking high level information, trying to make it at a third grade level, curating some of the best people I've interviewed, and giving sort of their highlight best takeaways to help encourage people. Because if you're really doing your due diligence, I can't tell you again how to live. If you have a newborn, if you have a new business project that takes 12 hours a day of your life, like where are you at and how can
Hmm.
you get it done right now? And so I have that. And I actually have a technology project I'm working on. I'm kind of resistant to technology because for the obvious reasons. But
I'm just
this,
laughing because I started before with you texting my husband. I hate technology.
I
I want to
just,
throw it all away. It
yes,
makes me so angry.
it's too much. But
Mm.
there is some cool stuff where I can, or the platform can connect with you and reach you where you're at in the language that you want to speak, right? Some people want to be like, hey, Maria, you got it today. Go ahead and get your workout done. And then you're connected to your friends or whatever the million things are. Or like, why haven't you done it yet? Like there's all the ways, right? I coach a lot of people, so it's like, okay, I get that. So I have this thing where, and it's sort of different. The idea would actually be to get people again back into the doing, not just the hacking, the measuring. Okay, here's your blood work. Great. Now what? And
Hmm.
so those are the things. My youngest daughter just graduated high school, so you sort of know it's coming. So for the last few years, I kind of been winding up, and we have actually some other. We have a food business that I love very very much.
It's so cool. I think we keep evolving and changing. And obviously like sports was your thing. And so that's why I was just curious like what your passions are officially now. I know a little bit
Hmm.
from what you see. So in terms of, you at this point in your life, what does workouts look like for you?
I'm not gonna lie, my workouts are hard. They're not. They're a continued extension of my life as an athlete.
So you
So
never slow down or changed your routines. You've just kept,
no, you do change. You have to
yeah.
change. I already have an artificial knee. You can't, there's just certain things. What happened is this training comes out of the desire to do it longer. So, for example, we have an underwater pool training that we added many years ago, probably 12 or no, actually 15 years ago. That was, sort of an experiment, and then try this, try that, try this, try that. The hope was to be explosive and dynamic, really important without crushing your joints. I wish I had it when I was younger. Hypoxic training. So you're working in the water, working with less air, and you're more efficient. And so ultimately, it's like the organism's working better. Oh, I feel stress. Okay, well, if I freak out, I burn air. So that I have to figure out a way to manage that. So that is sort of like an active meditation. So there's all kinds of elements. You're outside, you're with your friends. It's like, oh, pool party, even though you're, working pretty hard. So there's that component. I do that a couple days a week. And then I have like basically a high intensity workout. I write it new each time. It has about 16 stations. I'm there for 3 minutes. It usually has an A and a B move. And so there's sort of an impact, there's strength training, there's agility, proprioception and balance. And then there is the team aspect. So I let my friends come and they get to train with me. I used to do this on Kauai where I had 80 to 100 people. I charged everybody $1 and I designed work
8,200?
80 to 100 people. Yeah.
Wow.
But it was great. It was like a lab. So I could, listen, the thing about knowing something is when you know all the ways people could do it wrong. Now you really understand it, right? So
Hmm.
it was great because it was my community service to a place I love that I live, and that I put everyone on teams. So there would be 6 to 8 people together. So in the day you didn't want to show up, you probably showed up for your partner. If you didn't know, you were taught by one of your teammates how to do it. I could put all guys on one team. I could put 70-year-old ladies on another. It was like a very great way to make people accountable, show up, work hard, in and out, have a great day. So I've spent a lot of time trying to put in the elements that keep people from doing it, which is, I don't have the time, I get bored, it's expensive, and I don't know what to do. So how do you create that energy? So I do that 3 days a week, typically Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8:30.
Wow, that's so cool. Um, I don't know why, but it feels like a flash mob in my head with so many people.
Oh, it's absolutely, a thing. But, energy, there was something really beautiful about that workout. And I hope to resume it now that I'll probably be spending more time there because I did that for about, I don't know, 6, 7, maybe 8 years, 3 days a week, 6 months a year. But I I would see women that were in their 60s, right? And they're fit, like I'm talking fit, moving bodies. Then I'd have a 17-year-old girl, maybe she's doing the same exercise with less weight. So two things happen. The 17-year-old goes, "Oh, that's what 60 looks like." Okay. And then the 60-year-old also goes, "I'm doing okay." And so there were all these cross
Hmm.
things that were happening that I think were really, really useful.
I love that. I remember when I started doing Soul Cycle, I did it for a small period of time
Hmm.
when I was at E News. It was very cathartic. I would sit in the back and just guttural cry, and it felt great because no one knew what was going on. But what was fascinating was here I am, like, pretty fit person,
Hmm.
and I was struggling. Biking was hard. And I would look at people that were big or older, like, and I mean
Hmm.
older, and they were crushing. And I was like, damn, I got to hang in. And so they would help set the pace for me, just like you're saying. I was like, oh no, if they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
And so it is really inspiring when you have, all of that kind of happening in a class.
It is. It can be fun, but I think it's also important for people if they're willing. We sort of have 8 primal patterns, right? It's like push, pull, squat, lunge, twist, all these things. And the important thing is how can we do those also pretty well? So what I would say to people is sometimes we think it has to be so fancy. I'm still at 55, always working on my squat because it's not great. Like my hinge is really good and I can move my scapula better than most people. But let me tell you, my squat needs a lot of work. And so I guess what I think is important for people is we think fitness is sort of this thing. Well, it's an ongoing. It's making your bed. It's brushing your teeth. It's ongoing. We can always make little improvements. And also, it doesn't mean that we have to lift a certain amount of weight or look a certain way. It means that we're getting to do all the things that we really want to do in our life and we're not inhibited by not feeling good and hopefully avoid sickness, right? So I think for me, I mean, yes, I probably look fit, but that for me is not the definition of fitness.
Yeah. What's the hypoxia underwater stuff you were talking about?
So when you do hypoxic training, what ends up happening is you learn how to be more efficient with less oxygen. So what happens is a lot of people and athletes included, they don't have something what's called a good Bolt score, which is a tolerance to CO2. So if you ran and sprinted, your CO2 rises and you huff and puff, right? And when you hold your breath, the first chemical that's released to your brain is not it's not that you in fact have a lack of oxygen, it's that they send a message to your brain using CO2, you need to get air, right? So the more you can have a sort of a relationship with CO2, So then your Bolt score increases, which means you can do more with less air. So there's really a lot of great health benefits. It'd be like why someone throughout their day, unless they are sprinting, they never breathe through their mouth. They would breathe only through their nose. It's so that you have more CO2 in your system. So the oxygen that's in your bloodstream, it goes into the cells and the tissue, the muscle. So if you're mouth breathing all day, sitting here at your desk, you're scrubbing your CO2, so you're actually never oxygenating your system, which is so important just for health. Now, if you're talking
Mm.
about performance, if I have a runner and I encourage them to slow down in the beginning and try to breathe more with their mouth closed, their CO2 tolerance rises. So what happens? The time that the tissue and all the things get tired gets pushed further back because now their body's absorbing oxygen. So there's just a lot of benefits when you become more efficient with less air.
Wow. I never knew anything about that. Well, and it's funny because Jack was just doing an episode about oxygen, and I think you'd find it really interesting. I was just listening.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I think a lot of us, myself included, we don't give enough sort of credit to being able to breathe correctly, all the million things, whether it's the shape of your jaw, the health of your teeth, the quality of your sleep, your
Mm-hmm.
recovery, your tissue, your cells, all of the things, how improved they are by something that you can do anywhere. It's free. If you can learn to do it correctly, and then it's a tool also to be like, I want to kill somebody right now. Oh, I have a tool to calm down, right? So it's sort of this thing. I feel like if we had a place we had to go to quote breathe, and then we had to pay, we might value it more. Um,
Oh, it's so
but
true.
because it's like, well, what do you mean I can do that on my own? It's like, well, yeah,
I know, it's so true. If you don't pay for things, sometimes you really don't value it.
yeah,
You take it for granted. I
yeah.
wonder, being in volleyball your whole life, did
Hmm.
you use sunscreen? Because now knowing that you guys are Jack Kruse fans, I'm
Yeah,
sure that's kind of gone out the window like it has for me.
yeah.
And it's obviously a very controversial thing, but I wonder, did you used to use sunscreen?
Certainly I did. Yes. Laird has never. Laird is always been like, oh, it's chemicals. And then he had also performance issues with it because there's nothing worse if I would imagine if I don't go on big waves, but if there was a big wave and then you have sunblock in your eyes or on your hands,
Yeah.
that's not great for performance. So Laird has always been really pretty intense about not using sunblock. And I wore it for vanity because I didn't want to damage my skin. But then what I started to do was use a zinc or use other things, or just not if I could. When I was playing, I couldn't avoid being outside at 12 o'clock noon. If you're competing at noon, that's what you're doing. And so then when I finished playing, I would just, earlier, later versus okay, peak hours and be out baking in the sun. And I have pretty dark skin. My father's from Trinidad, but still it's sort of like, you talk about the solar callus.
Hmm.
I go pool train now for a couple of hours and I don't get burned. Um, and so I try really hard not to wear block at this point.
Yeah. I wondered what your relationship was to it. And also knowing that Laird wasn't wearing it. I mean, you could tell he
Mhm.
probably wasn't wearing it.
Yeah.
Because he's always so tan. Was it a conflict with you guys?
We have a pretty good understanding that we're not each other's parents. And so, rock on, like do what you got to do. And I certainly I think I'm maybe less obviously somebody who pushes, but I have said I believe I've said many times like I am not one of your daughters, like I'm your wife. So I think but we don't really do that
Yeah.
to each other. And there were times when my kids were really young. It was interesting, this when your kids are born, they say, yeah, don't use any sunblock for the first year of their life. Just keep them protected, but you want to expose them a bit to sun, obviously. So I always thought, oh, it's so interesting. So after a year, it's okay to put the stuff on. So I was always pretty mindful about what I was putting on the girl's skin for sure.
Yeah, I never heard that actually. No one ever said that. In fact, everyone was scaring me to keep her out of the sun. And I was like, nope, she's going to be in the sun all the time. And when Jack came to the house, he goes, that baby should be black. And I was like, we're working on her tan, Jack. We're working on it.
Yeah,
But
slowly.
Yeah, slowly but surely.
Yeah.
But she now is at the equator without sunscreen and never burns because I've had her in the sun at sunrise from the day she was born. 23 minutes in, she was already in the sun. So she can tolerate it.
How old is she now?
Question. She's
Sorry.
2.
Oh, wow.
She's so mushy.
Such a, it's hard, it's just constant, it's never ending, and it's so freaking great.
It's the best. I
Mm.
never knew. I would have never known. You mentioned earlier that you had knee surgery.
Mhm.
So, what was that recovery like for you? Was that hard for you to kind of be laid out? I'm sure you were laid out for a while, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've had other knee surgeries over the years. I think most athletes have some type of something over the years. And in a way, I had to, I got an artificial knee the last surgery. So I had had other surgeries on my knee. It kind of sucked for 8 weeks. And then you roll. And what I will say to anybody that's going to get a joint replacement, especially a knee, because the hip's easier, is somebody told me this and I was so grateful. The first 4 weeks are just, they're terrible. And then it just gets way better. And so if anyone's going through that, just be like, you know what? I'm not going to go in and out. You might be sleep deprived, so okay, but just have that confidence of I'm going to do my therapy, I'm going to do my things, I'm going to eat in a way that supports recovery and healing. And then I know I won't have any emotional real responses until after 4 weeks. So I had been hurt before, and so you just learn how to keep your head down, do the things that help, and believe that you'll come out of it on the other side.
Well, what do you think was key to helping you recover quickly?
Well, I have a good diet. Nutrition is very good because you don't want to work against yourself and be eating things that are causing more inflammation that your body's already navigating. I think I didn't take pain medicine, but trying to get sleep obviously is great for recovery. And then doing the rehab, doing these little silly exercises and bends, we don't give it enough credit, but the idea of getting the joint to either be an extension, which is more important even than flexion, is something that you want to stay kind of focused on, which is the rehab. Because a lot of people, they get surgeries and they don't do the thing that's almost as important, which is the rehab. And so sometimes you go, well, what does that do? It's like it kind of does a lot.
Yeah. Did you do any like cold plunging or red light or anything like that?
Yeah, I did a lot of sauna the wound was healed because you don't want to get in a bunch of water. And then, cold plunge I used a little bit later because I think at that point heat is more healing actually than cold. And something that I've learned more recently is cold may not be great for people. I don't have a thyroid issue, but if anyone does, I will always say that as a caveat. The two times I've heard it may not be great is
Hmm.
I know it's not great right after lift weights because you want that damage to occur. So you want to separate the time of a cold plunge from banging iron versus doing a sport. You can go right from like I'm at football practice and I go into an ice tub. That's different. And then if people have thyroid issues, sometimes the cold's not great. So sauna, and then I love red light and hyperbaric chamber, of course. If there's access to it, I mean that's more fancy, of course, but really makes a difference in the healing, big time.
Yeah. What about supplements and things like that? Are you somebody who likes to take supplements?
I definitely take D3 and K2 together. I take creatine. I do take fish oils, and then I'll add. So I'll do, I'll cycle in other things like a multi and certain things. I try to keep it pretty simple. And also, I'm very low in iron, so I will
Hmm.
supplement with iron.
Yeah, I've been anemic my whole life, and beef liver changed my life.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
you ever tried beef liver capsules?
Yeah, I like Heart and Soil. I like Paul Saladino's brand. I don't get into, honey, broccoli bullshit, but their products are really good. So I like that brand very much. And also we get Access deer livers
Mm.
from Maui. And so Laird will make pâtés and do things like that. So that's another way to get a lot of that and doesn't taste livery.
Yeah, I was trying to do a lot of liver at first because I couldn't keep my eyeballs open and I just couldn't get it down enough. Like someone has to really make it delicious for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, what else can I do? And my naturopath was like, let's get you on beef liver capsules. But
Yeah.
Gabby, it changed my life.
So good.
And it's the first time I'm not anemic.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I literally genetically have that as well. And I think my body has adjusted to it because they'll even talk about your lip color and things like that. And someone asked me once, like, do you feel like you're muscling through things? I go, what does that mean? Isn't that how you do things, you
Isn't
know?
that normal?
Yeah. So, but they really can give you some buoyancy to your system for sure.
Oh, yeah. And, I know one of the things that, everybody was asking, like when we were prepping for your interview too,
Yeah.
was, what at this point do you do to look so beautiful and fresh? Like, what are
Oh,
your, you said you're 55, right?
yeah.
Okay. So we're aging, we're changing.
Yeah.
How is it you're only a few years ahead of me? I'm 47.
Hmm.
I know I'll look back at pictures and be like, oh shit, I was really young. Like
Yeah.
things are changing. Like when I look in the mirror, I don't see it.
Yeah.
I still feel the same, but when I look back at pictures, I'm like, oh my God, what a difference.
Yeah. You know, I have a I this is where I use discipline. This may make sense because people go, practice of gratitude. I believe that it just doesn't work for me. So what I do is I have first the discipline of my perspective. Because I do think if you can be in charge of your perspective, it just makes everything else easier. So I don't start with the beauty practices and then kind of work my way back to my perspective. I sort of go, huh, okay, so this seems normal, like time moves, people age. So is this normal? It is normal. Okay. It has also been something where it's the honor, it's the privilege to be older. And yeah, does it mean every corner of it is sexy? No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to fluff that up. I'm just saying, like, but it is an honor. It's an honor to have longer friendships, to be with my children. And so it's really approaching it from that point of view first. And then I pull all the levers I can with my sleep and my sense of purpose and contribution and my, training and all the things I'm in charge of. I do not screw around with those. So what happens is I do believe that when we do kind of all we can do within reason, right? I try not to be obsessive. Then it's like I'm doing what I can do. And usually I feel pretty good. So that helps with the perspective. And it helps to have a partner that we have a dynamic relationship. So that keeps kind of that energy alive instead of like, oh, we're older and now we're flat tires. But it's
Hmm.
like, oh no, we're older and we're still playful and we still are attracted to each other and we can learn new ideas. I think that part of what happens when we start aging or getting older is we're not taking new input. And so it's like, meh, meh, same conversation, same bullshit versus like, oh wow, you learned that today. That's really interesting. I was thinking about this and I've changed my point of view on this. So I think it's also about having those people and those situations that inspire you because then your life becomes about so much more, especially for women, right? Then like, how do I look?
Yeah.
And then the other part is I have, three daughters and it's sort of very interesting. I have very, beautiful, dynamic, intelligent daughters that it feels really natural for me not to be sort of like, I don't need to be sort of the freshest, prettiest girl in the room. I live in a house with women that I'm like, wow, they are badass. And I can celebrate them. And that feels good. And having said all that, all of it, like I'm going to do everything I can. I have said this many times. If I get to a place in my life that if for some reason I think, getting a facelift will make me feel better and I've done all the things I can do, I'll do it because I don't I'm not going to be a person who dies on one hill or another. I'll just see how I feel when I get there. And as far as like screwing around with all the face stuff, you can tell I haven't done that. So it's kind of do what you can do, and then talk to me in a few years.
I love that. I think that, I mean, you have such a strong constitution. My God, like a strong mind to be able to like, you're like collecting all of this data all around and you're like, okay. And I don't know, I've never heard anybody say anything like that. It was pretty fascinating.
Well,
And
also listen, I think it's this too. It's understanding biology, right? So I am not at the place where I'm giving off all these pheromones and hormones, right? So half the reason men have stopped looking at me the way that they looked at me when I was 25 is I don't have that signal. Now, am I not an attractive woman? Do I not command space? Yeah, I probably do. But why people don't snap their neck anymore is because I don't have that signal. That party is over. So I think sometimes we take
I
everything
love
so
you.
so personal, like, well, it's because I'm older. It's like, yes and no. Like there's so many things going on that we don't see that have nothing to do with like, hey, you're not a pretty lady anymore. You are, but you're not signaling that you want to procreate. So like not everybody on the block's going to be looking at you.
Oh
And I have an understanding of that. And and if you're busy and you have things you're in charge of, then your values are shifted. So I get to
yeah.
be, instead of like just shiny and whatever, maybe I can be like a boss, or I have experience, or I can be important to my family. So I think it's that too.
Oh my God. So well said. So well said. I love that. That is incredible perspective and so helpful for me to hear, but I know for everybody who's hearing, it's true. Like we're not supposed to be the one that everybody's looking at anymore. I mean, again, not that we're not something to look at, but we're not in that place. Like I would never think about it like that.
Yeah, it's not the time for that, right? And so I think we've mismatched our value with something that's invisible that's happening, and or that we're not interesting, or like you said, beautiful in a different way. And what is so ironic, which I love about nature, is at the time that you are experiencing that in your teens and 20s and 30s, a lot of women are so uncomfortable. It's like, oh, I got to walk down past the construction guys when I lived in Manhattan at 18, and I go, okay, here we go. And it's so funny because we forget about that too. Like that's
Yeah.
not easy when it's like, you're on full signal and everyone's like, whoa, and you're just like, oh.
I know. It's so funny because I remember, I think it was like in COVID, there was a moment where I went to Coffee Bean and this guy like actually got out of his car and started hitting on me. And I was like, whoa,
Oh,
what the heck is happening? And I realized that hasn't happened in so long. So I
yeah.
went home, I'm like, honey, I got hit on. I got hit on. Someone thought I was cute. But I forgot. Like that is just and is it the ring on the finger and people just turn the other way? Or like you said, is the signal gone? We're looking at it all the wrong way.
Yeah.
And also looking at it the right way, which was the next step you gifted us with, is we have value. And I think that we think our value ends with our beauty, but our value really just then extends because we have experience. We have, we've done so much. I mean, I was just on set of a movie with, all these, 20-year-olds. I'm like, listen, when we work on the next one, come sit next to me and I will teach you every single thing about how to make sure each frame says something in a movie, how to make sure we are, getting the performance out of the actors, whatever it is. Like I'll show you how to do everything. And I'm
Yeah.
excited to do that for them. But that's not going to be me at 20. Me at 20 is trying to prove myself. Me at 20 is actually trying to do all of this stuff.
Yeah. There's a book Arthur C. Brooks wrote. Forgive me, I don't know if it's strength. It's not strength to strength. I have to remember, but he talks about sort of we have these arcs in our lives, right? Like when we're younger, this sort of dynamic, and mathematicians are doing equations, but as we get older, we synthesize information better, we communicate it better, all these things. And if we can know when to jump off one to go to the next, there's great satisfaction in life. And I think I think the hard thing is, and nobody likes to talk about it, is if you are a woman who chooses to serve your family, even if you're working, what happens is your kids grow up and they leave, and hopefully they build a life, right? And so that means there's independence. They don't probably call as much or whatever. And then if you are in their partnership, your partner they don't lose stride the way typically a female does. And it's usually by our choice, right? We want to be there. It's important. Then we get to a place around my age, earlier, later, we're pissed because we got left behind. And we're like, oh, okay, so I served everybody, and now where am I in this equation? And so what I want
Yeah.
to encourage, younger women or even women of my age, because the great thing about aging is if you can do it without being resentful or angry, because then you think, oh, well, they're not attracted to me, or they don't like me, or they don't call because I'm older. It's like, well, no, you're mad. And it's fair, right? It's a fair thing to feel. But the problem is nobody's going to help us with that but us. And maybe one best girlfriend who might ask you, like, hey, what turns you on? What would you like to do? Even if it's volunteering, because the experience is gold, but it still has to be kind of housed with somebody who's like, hey, good morning, not, someone who you can tell feels slighted.
Mm.
And so
Yeah,
it's like,
nobody wants to
how
be around that energy already. So now it's
they don't.
double hard.
Yeah. And so how would we encourage our daughters or, nieces or whoever to go, hey, listen, the whole time, no matter what your choice is, work, CEO, kids, husband, not, whatever, who cares? You still have to think about who you are the whole time so that you can find the small and bigger ways to support her. So when you get spit out of this thing, if you choose to have a family or dedicate yourself to a career, that you can find yourself, because there's a lot of life to live. So I think that has been very helpful for me, is that I am, wildly self-protective in that way. And I was like, I am not going to get taken down by my family.
Wow. Never heard that either, Gab. These are like really big gems. I mean, I can see where you could get lost in your family. Like I've been in a career my whole life. I thought a family, I mean, first of all, it wasn't happening forever. And
Mm,
then I was so scared of how it would just disrupt things, maybe. I knew I wanted it. I was still moving forward on, but I was terrified of
mm,
all the things that could go wrong. And now, of course, it's like the greatest thing that ever happened to me. But I'm still doing my work. I'm still living my life. I'm still growing. I'm still doing my thing. And I think
mm.
what you're really teaching is that it's important to keep your own self and your own independence and your own life parallel to your family and the world because,
Yeah,
you know, at the end of the day, we are on our own. We
we are.
we have everyone, but we're still it's us.
Yes. And we are driven to serve them. That feels good. And and I think it's so powerful and great, but simultaneously, it's like you manage to put mascara on, do your hair, and you're learning new stuff. And I don't care if a woman reads books about plants and their original names and then has a garden, good enough. It's not about something monumental. I'm just talking about outside interests, outside passions, self development, something that excites you. So I want to also clarify it doesn't mean like, and then you got to start a Fortune 500 company whenever the kids
Hmm.
leave home. I'm not talking about that, because it doesn't take much, but it's like your own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I also I loved earlier when you were talking about kind of meeting people where they are. I
Mm,
think I've never properly been able to express it, but like sometimes we'll do stuff on the show and I'll be like, guys, this isn't for everybody. Like, we can do these things now because we've already built our lives and our careers. You can't take this advice in the wrong way. Like, it's not one size fits all. So I think everything that you're listening to, you know, you have to figure out where you're at and how it may or may not fit into you.
yeah, because I don't know how you can take the next step if you don't know where you're starting from. And so, it's a little bit like coaching somebody. The whole idea is to just take you a little further than where you were. And so it isn't going to be, all activities match everybody. And so I think we have to give ourselves that break. So it's got to be grace, but it has to also be full accountability because people really, they bullshit themselves a lot and they make excuses. So the other side of that is you have to be willing to really take a look at it.
Do you do any other kind of holistic things? Like, do you meditate? Do you do anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I have breathing practices. I like to do breathing. I'm not great. Laird does it way more than I do. I like the breathing because it sort of is like an active meditation. Um, and I certainly, have these modalities. I have a red bed. I have a hyperbaric, not a tent. I have a real one. Because if you said, "Hey, where you want to put your money?" I want to put my money in these things. Um, and and I
Hmm.
think when I notice if I'm getting really wound up, if the wrong things are making me crazy, I'm like, okay, what's going on? Like you gotta, because stress is really important. And then also I say you got to keep the decks clear in all your relationships. So with friends or your partners, it's like I don't have a lot of stuff being built up. It's like, hey, I need to talk to you, or I like this, I didn't like that, I need to apologize. Whatever it is I have learned this really from Laird, which is to clear the decks all the time, which has been a really helpful practice.
So, are we ever going to see you guys in El Salvador?
Oh yeah, Laird is obsessed.
Does he
And
know Jack yet? Has he met him?
he does, and he's talked to Rick about introducing him because also it's small, but there is surf in El Salvador.
I know.
So
That's where I bought. I bought in Zante.
yeah, so Laird
Yeah.
wants to surf and go see Jack, but he also just wants to be in that environment. I mean, we spend a lot of time on Kauai, but
Hmm.
it's still, believe it or not, the sun is not as strong as you would think.
I know.
So it's kind of all that. The air is quite good, and the water is good. But yeah, it's a dance. So he made some comment out of the side of his mouth the other day about like, well, maybe El Salvador. I was like, you know what? I'm along for the ride. Like, let's go, whatever.
But yeah, so cool that you guys are Kruse fans and mitochondriacs, and
Oh yeah.
you guys are obviously doing a lot of great work, and I'm really just grateful for all of your perspective you shared with us today because I know it's kind of taken me aback, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot to kind of apply. It's cool.
I think in life we get told we're supposed to be all these things instead of get encouraged to ask ourselves who we are and what we like and how we want to show up in the world and also how we change, right? And to give ourselves permission because it's really short. It's really, really short. And Byron Katie said to me once, she has a program called The Work that, if you want to be a really good example to your children, you could do two things. Listen without needing to solve their problems. Just listen, but really listen. And try your best, because happy is sort of a silly word, right? To be as happy as you can so they have an example of what that looks like. And I think sometimes we're so dutiful that we don't give ourselves permission in other ways to take care of ourselves.
Friends, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Gabby. I loved every minute of it. Oh my gosh, she is a wealth of information, but really a wealth of perspective. And I'm really grateful for her perspective. If you did too, please share it with a friend or two. We also have more info about Gabby, her podcast, Laird Superfood, and more inside the show notes below. We'll also link the episodes I did with Dr. Jack Kruse in case you haven't heard it, since it was something Gab referenced in our chat a few times. Until next time, friends, be nice people, make good choices, and be present. Heal Squad, we have been on quite the journey together, and we're hearing from so many of you just how much this show is helping you heal and get better, and it makes us feel so good. We love, love, love it, and we just ask that you don't keep it to yourself. Spread the message and share the show or your favorite episode with your friends. And if you want to help us even more, you can leave us a 5-star rating and a comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and follow us on Instagram at Heal Squad. You can also DM us anytime because we love connecting with you. And finally, you can also join us on Patreon for our monthly live heal events with world-class healers and ad-free episodes exclusive only to Patreon and our Super Heal Squad for as little as $10 a month. So go to patreon.com/Heal Squad to join. Getting better isn't easy, friends, but as I say all the time, it's a whole lot easier if we can do it together. We love you all so much, and we love doing this thing called life with you.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or MariaMenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.